Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for convening this hearing. It's a very important topic. I welcome our witnesses today as the subcommittee considers issues affecting environmental justice populations. To begin with, I think we should define what we mean by environmental justice, and I think really a better topic, and you might agree, Mr. Chair, is environmental injustice, because it's those populations that you're talking about who are experiencing an injustice. Although federal law gives no official definition to the term, it typically refers to situations in which adverse health or environmental impacts fall disproportionately on minority or low-income populations. There has been a growing recognition of the need to address environmental justice in recent years. The Flint water crisis in Michigan comes to mind as a major example. But not all cases of environmental injustice receive the same attention. One prominent example is in my state of Mississippi, where residents of the South Delta have long suffered repeated flooding from the Mississippi River. The South Delta has a predominantly minority population and faces unique economic challenges, which are made worse by the recurrence of flooding. This region has flooded in 8 out of the last 10 years, the most recent being this year, when nearly 300,000 acres were inundated. Flooding was even worse in 2019, when over 500,000 acres went underwater for months. Water overtopped roads, closed 3 highways, kept many residents from leaving their homes. 231,000 acres of cropland were flooded, destroying livelihoods in a region where agriculture is the main economic driver. Wildlife was forced to flee to high ground. 686 homes were flooded, 686 families, and 2 people were tragically killed. According to one study from Mississippi State University, the 2019 backwater flood resulted in residents spending on average more than $42,000 in out-of-pocket expenses. Can you imagine? People were forced to build levees around their property to keep the floodwaters from encroaching all around them. These are costs that many residents simply cannot afford. In 5 of the 6 counties of the South Delta, roughly 1/3 of the population lives in poverty. For years, residents have moved away because of the continuing flood risk. As populations decline, the community fabric has frayed, leaving many behind who have nowhere else to go. Regular flooding reinforces this cycle of poverty because residents lack the certainty they need to build homes and establish new businesses. The real tragedy, though, is that these floods are entirely preventable. In 1941, 80 years ago, Congress made a promise to the people living along the Mississippi River. That promise was the Mississippi Rivers and Tributaries System, which includes a series of levees, flood control structures, and pumps to remove excess rainwater trapped by the levees from the residential areas and farmland. Over the years, this system has been built up and down the Mississippi River, with one major exception. The Yazoo backwater pumps have never been completed. The system has been completed everywhere else. Of the 4 backwater areas along the Mississippi, the Yazoo backwater area is the only one missing backwater pumps. If we are here to discuss environmental injustice, I would suggest that the residents of the South Delta face one of the most glaring instances of environmental injustice anywhere in the nation. The good news, though, is that today there is a viable project to remedy this situation. For years, I've worked with local stakeholders, Army Corps of Engineers, and federal officials to get these pumps finally built. And earlier this year, the Army Corps finally issued a record of decision in favor of the pump project, a milestone that brings it closer to final construction. And I'm happy to say, Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen, that this plan is a win for animal life, for plant life, and for human life. There's no doubt this proposal would have positive impacts on minority and low-income communities. South Delta homes and businesses would enjoy a hedge of protection, allowing for greater economic development to take hold. The proposal would improve aquatic and wildlife conditions, water quality, and it would improve the environment. and nearly 2,500 acres of cropland would be reforested, providing quality habitats for many fish and wildlife. The science and the economics finally all line up in support of the backwater pumps. As this project shows, there are communities across the nation that need true physical infrastructure to remedy cases of environmental injustice. Thank you, Mr. Chair.